also get a certificate. So welcome to another American TESOL Presents Free Friday webinars. We have over 200 that we have already posted. You have resources. You can still go watch the recordings. They're on YouTube. They're 30 minutes. You can also get a certificate for each. So it's all free and it's great. And we do this on different topics. So even if you teach very young learners, and when you teach, oh wow, Mexico. So we always have a worldwide audience. And feel free to invite anyone. Just click the link and they'll be there. So you can find all of these resources. Today the resources are actually under my bookmarks of blogging. And the reason why is because I kind of put this topic in hand. We've already done a topic on news English, how you can learn English by studying the news. But on this one, we actually are proposing that students become the ones who write the news, report the news, and that's how they're going to learn. So I'm going to go ahead and share with you, and a lot of that you can do in a blog. So that's what I recommend, because if you do it then in a blog, then it can be something that's ongoing and you can cover any topic. So I've put the resources for the pearl trees on the bottom, but that's why it's listed under there. Okay, no problem, whatever you're comfortable with. So when you are working with the news, the great thing about the news is that unlike literature, you know, a lot of our students, literature is very difficult for them to grasp. Oh, and thank you for posting your webinars tomorrow, Peggy, because those are really great as well. And they'll give you actually more in, you'll get an hour of that. But when you're working with literature, it's difficult for all of our students sometimes to really get into literature quickly. And I love literature. I love reading. That's just something that I've always done. And I love writing as well. And we know that for language, and even in general, you have to know how to read and write. You can't. There's so much. Life is so much easier if you read and you write effectively. So journalism, the great thing about it is when you're a journalist, you're involved with the writing. In other words, you have to care about the writing. So that's why I propose that you have to think about your audience, and that's the difference. Journalism always has an audience. You're always writing for people, and that makes it more engaging. It makes it to where your students are more motivated to go out and do this on their own. So when you think about it, you have your students, as soon as they start, they're going to, you're going to always have, once you start and you keep this going, your students are going to start doing it on their own, because it's very motivational when you have them act as journalists. They take ownership of their learning. They're excited because they're learning more ways. And there's different types of news as well. We read the news, we listen to the news, we watch the news. And it's funny because before we used to gather around the radio and listen to the news as a family. Now what we do is we can do this on our iPad. We can listen to podcasts. We can watch VOD. In the past, hopefully you got my sound. It cut off for just a bit. Sorry about that. Um, so in the past, we had radio news, we had television, we had newspaper, print, and magazines, and we still have all of those today. But there's definitely a transition in the way that we consume news. So now we have things where our students can do this digitally. So when it used to be really expensive for us to have a school newspaper or class magazine because of all the print costs, you don't even need a whole studio or anything anymore. So now it's very easy for you to get your students to create an ongoing podcast, an e-zine, podcast, and I'm going to show you some free tools to do that, but also different ways that they can, yeah, exactly, videos, and they can do video segments, and it really is great for them. When you're doing different types of writing, the great thing is it's when you do act as journalists, and you have a class, and that's what I propose, that you have a blog, and you have them basically where they're ongoing. It's ongoing. So what you're going to do is create either a school or a class news, and you can decide which one you want. You may have it to where your students do the video. You might have it where it does a podcast. Podcasts seem to be one of the easiest and quickest ways to get them doing this. But even with that, when you practice collaborative. I mean, it's very, you have to work as a team when you have a news, when you're producing the news. And there's different sections. There's advertisements, there's reviews. So you practice different types of writing: editorials, updates, interviews, commentaries, reports. You practice script writing. And so you can do things that are very, very long, such as editorials, and you do have to do research. To something that's very short, which is advertisements. And that makes being journalist very effective because you can cover any topic. That's the great thing about it. You can diversify. You can, your students, each of your students will find something that they're interested in and they can report on. They can, if you give them a choice, and if you have something like a class magazine or newspaper, and I'll show you how to do that digitally, then each of them can take sections and be responsible for that section. You can pair them up and they can be responsible for the section. And then the other thing you can do is you can have them switch so that they're not always practicing. So one week you can have a weekly newspaper, you can have a monthly one, whatever is manageable. And once you first set this up, then after that, it gets easier because your students start running it. And when you have the different sections, each student's going to find something they're interested in. You're going to have someone who's very good at drawing and wants to do comics. Or they can use a comic creator, an online comic creator, if they don't want to do the drawing. One of the things they can do is they can also cover current events, sports. A lot of times boys, it's challenging to get them interested in some of the different types of writing and stuff, but they definitely, a lot of them like to cover sports. And they can even cover local sports. They can go out, and if one of them says, hey, you can even gather the room and you can say, hey, okay, what are you doing this weekend? And they can tell you, and you can say, okay, these are the different sections we have to cover. Now, what are you doing this weekend that you could cover? And someone might raise their hand and say, hey, I'm going to go watch a soccer game. Or another one might, and I can cover that. And another one might say, oh, I'm going to go to the zoo, and I can write about animals. So when you think of it that way as well, your students get to have a choice, and they get to eventually propose stories, and that's something that they really, really love. And then, of course, like fashion, the girls love to write about fashion. So some of the skills that you also learn with this is you learn visual design. You learn the art of matching the visuals, the pictures, with what they're writing. A lot of times capturing the person they're interviewing, capturing the story, what's going to be the best picture. So when you do this, you also develop the skills. So at the beginning, they're just learning all these skills. And what I propose is that they watch people that are really good at it. So it's good to have examples and bring those examples in class. And they also learn the art of layout. They learn what it means to have white space. They learn what it is to have different fonts, and what fonts work and what fonts don't, especially for reading digitally, because when you read print versus digital, it's different the way you're going to do things. Editing, they learn about research, they learn about citation, why it's important that the thing is they have an audience they're responsible for. So when they have a audience they're responsible for, then then they realize you can go over why it's important that they report the news accurately, the ethics behind that. They learn note taking because when they're doing interviews or they're even watching a sports event, they have to learn how to quickly look, observe, and then write. And so they learn the art note taking skills. They learn evaluation. They also get to observe culture. It's world learning. So all of this, and it's collaborative. They're not going to be able to do this without their classmates. So what does all this look like in the classroom? So we see that it's great. Well, this is a really good example. This is what's called this teacher that I met in when I was doing a keynote in MSU, Michigan State University, and she came up to me and she showed me this, and I just thought it was awesome. So what she does is she has her students, and these are in middle school. That means they're about 12 years old, and they have this is all in WordPress. You can go, it's livingtextbook.aja.org, and now they've done it to where they actually interview. It's actually a global project, so they've even interviewed people around the world and make that their stories. So the students pick out these stories, they write them, so you can go, and that's a really good example. It is advanced writing as well, so this is something that it might look like if you do it on a WordPress. There are some other ways you can do it that I think are a little bit easier to set up. One of them was that you could go to glossy.com, and Glossy allows you to even embed videos. So this is how at this particular one, this is how they did it, and they had the news report it, and they even put pictures, and you can do layout, and you can play with headings and things like that. So Glossy is more like an e-zine. You can also use something like if you decided instead of doing an e-zine, or an e-zine is an online magazine, you could have them do a newspaper. And so if you go to esu.com, esu.com is a really good place. All of these, by the way, are free. So you can use these tools in the classroom, and you don't have to pay for them. So esu.com is good. This one supports different layouts for them, so this is a good example that you can see, and they can always do the same layout. Another way to do this, if you have individual class blogs, like for example, if you're having them to where they go and they're going to go ahead and they're going to go ahead and they're going to be responsible for their own stories, and you don't want it all in one. If you use Glossy and Issue, the thing is that it can't usually be collaborative. In other words, they're going to have to all put this in together. Or one person, you can assign a person or two people to lay it all out. And that does happen in a real newspaper. So one of these things that you can do is you can also go and you can, okay. Okay, that's a good question, Benjamin. What I propose is that this is actually your homework. So you do away with homework, and you actually send them on journalistic missions. Because soon as they say homework, and the thing is that they're learning this, and when they're learning it this way, it's much different. Plus, a lot of our homework that we give them isn't really enriching homework. It's things that it's things where they're drilling. It's things that aren't fun. Yeah, exactly. It could become a group project. And it depends on you how much time is put on this. You could decide to just do one issue. You could say, we're going to do a class magazine for just this month. You can make it a monthly thing. You can make it every other month. See, that's the wonderful thing about the news, is that your news ends up, you have different subscriptions. So magazines that come bi-weekly, magazines that come once a year. So it's up to you what you decide is best for your particular situation. But that's a very good question, so thank you for asking that, Benjamin. And so Flipboard is one of these where if they have individual blogs, like you have Kid Blog, or let's say you have them each on a WordPress or something, what you can do with Flipboard is it makes it into a magazine. You just submit the RSS feed, and it makes it so easy because you don't, and you can, it's on the web, but it's also an iOS app, so they can also do this on their iPad. So that's great. And they can watch it anywhere, though. They can watch it in Android and everything, but they can only edit and stuff on the iOS and on the web. And it's as easy as submitting their RSS feeds, and after that, as soon as they update it, it'll automatically update on the Flipboard magazine, and it makes everything easy. So that's what I would suggest. It's going to save you a lot more time that way. So those were the print options: magazines, newspaper, class magazine, newspaper. One of the easiest ways that people do this, that teachers actually do this, is through audio news. And with audio news, you have to brainstorm, research, record, edit, broadcast, you interview, all of these. But it's a podcast, so what it is that students go and you might have an editor, like you have different types of editors depending on if you have Mac, or if you're doing this on a mobile device. You will have things like Audacity if you're on a PC, and those are Audacity is a free tool. So when you have a podcast, I'll show you places you can host it, but there's different ways you can record it. So you can actually put the news, each of them can go, and you can send it to them with vukaroo.com. It's really easy. All they do is they actually get this here, and they just click and they record. It's that easy. They can do it anywhere, so it's pretty awesome. It's the easiest thing. Teachers love it. The other one is Audio Boost. So Audio Boost is one of those where they can continue to have the same podcast. Now you can have them in groups, do each a podcast, or you can have it to where it's a class one, and each week or each month you rotate the students in charge. That's something that I usually do. So if I don't, I've usually worked with like just one computer in the classroom, or two. And what I've done is I've taken where they did the recording, and each month on my calendar I write the students in charge of creating the podcast that week. So then it only becomes that person's particular assignment at the time. And so that's one way that I've managed this. And then we have, there are really great tools out there. So one of the best ones, and this is on everything, iPadio. So you can get this online. You can, and that's the great thing about iPadio and AudioBoo. You can use any tool. You can use a Chromebook. You can use a telephone with iPadio. Actually, you can use iPad. You can use iPhone. You can use the web, just a regular browser. So you can record from anywhere. So those are my favorite tools. I especially like iPadio. iPadio, it will have up to 60 minutes. The thing with AudioBoo is it's 10 minutes per segment. So it might be good to start with AudioBoo, and you can add pictures. But on iPadio, you can add up to 4 photos. And think of it, the whole entire school is going to listen to this, as well as the parents and their peers. So it's going to be very helpful for them. So one of the things that I suggest you do is after they brainstorm and come up with the stories, you want them to go ahead and practice the planning. When you do have when you study news reports and when you study broadcasts, and I cover this in my book, I'll show you in a bit, they actually go and they listen to famous broadcasters. They look at famous people in the news like Walter Cronkite and things like that, and they study them to see what was meant, and then I'll ask them, I'll say, what makes them a good reporter? What makes them good at, why were these people famous for reporting the news? And depending on what media we're using, either video, then that's the one we'll look at. So after they watch and review and they let you know, hey, this person, because of his voice or because he did this or she did this, then the other thing you can do is you can have them actually write. They work together and they write it out. They write what's called a script. Now, there are scripts for audio. There's also scripts for video news. And depending on the media, it's going to be different. But in my book, actually, I do put examples there, so that way the students know specifically what to review. They're writing it for an audience, and when they're doing the script, one of the things you have in mind, and so you cover digital citizenship and literacy with this as well. So that's why I have this. I think this is really great for students to do, because instead of doing all the other stuff and trying to cover digital literacy, cover science, cover writing, cover research, essay, all of that, you can do that with just getting them all to report the news. You can actually take all of those skills that they're supposed to learn, whether it be the objectives, Common Core, STEM, and all that, and this will cover all of it. So if you constantly have this as your curriculum framework, then they are learning your subject matter and what they're doing, because if you're teaching science, you can still have science comics. If you're teaching science, they still have, they can even review sports, and they can cover the angles. How did this player, why is this person such good at throwing the ball? I mean, so there's so many different ways that you can cover your topic by doing it this way. So in other words, what I'm proposing is that I think it's really good if you can just do this as a curriculum, because most curriculums aren't very good these days anyway. They don't get students to really apply what they learn to actual real world learning. They don't tie into it. So that's what I'll be doing in January, and hopefully give you specific examples and a curricula that you can work from, because that's what my students are going to be doing. When they write for an audience, they also become digital citizens, because you have them constantly think about what's your responsibility. So what are some good video ones? Well, TouchCast is great. So if you have access to an iOS, then I really think you'll love TouchCast. You can actually put words that pop up. They have other videos that will pop up as well. You can feed in other videos as well. It has a teleprompter, a green screen. You can add sound effects and everything. It's a free app. So if you have access to iPads, that's good. If not, then you can use something called freeteleprompter.org. So if you have someone filming with they can film with anything, even a digital camera. You have one person that's doing the filming. You have another that's showing them the teleprompter after they've already written this. And then they record their news segment. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot of digital research involved, so they're automatically, you don't have to do digital literacy. You don't have to do it separately. It actually is covered when you do this. So here's a really good place to start with. This gives a general idea of what research is. And even without, this is for kids, but even I show this to adults, and because it has the stages, and I really like that. I think it makes a very good visual to show them the process of digital research. So what they do, reporting the news online is a bit different in doing digital research. So they actually learn to curate, aggregate, highlight. It's more effective. You actually become much better at it. And then next time we're going to cover, in a few weeks, we're going to cover writing research papers, and I'll talk a little bit more about using Google to do this because it has some really good options for that. But you can use Google, Evernote. These are free tools. I recommend Google to every teacher. I think every teacher should have that because it's really awesome. It's the easiest way to do anything. But Evernote's really good as well because you want to get tools. Now, Google and Evernote are the same way. They're free and you can access them on the web. You can access them on an Android device, on a iOS device. You can do it on a Chromebook. I mean, so they're really, really great. They also make grading easier, and I'm going to show you how I grade because I do everything pretty much on Google. That's what I do with my students currently, and they have everything. They just make life in general easier. So with Evernote, though, if you do choose to do the Evernote route, then your students can have pictures, they can save their audio, and they don't even have to be connected to the internet. And what you can do is if you connect it to postdatch.io, whatever they put in a certain folder will automatically be laid out and be pretty for them. So I think that's one of the easiest way to do this in blog. It's really great putting those two together. They also practice curation and social bookmarking. I'm not going to go over all of these, but these are the ones I recommend. You'll see an example if you look at my bookmarkers. You'll also have Pearl Trees. You'll see Pearl Trees. Storify is wonderful. You can use it. These are ways that they can collect the research. This is what it looks like. So when you go to a website, like for example with Digo, you can have sticky notes. It even does it with a PDF. It lets you highlight, and so it's really effective, beautiful research, and that's the way they do research online. So they can get really in depth at the research. Peggy, yesterday I tried QPrompter and it was offline. That's why I didn't put that one because that usually is the best one, but it seems to not be working. Well, it didn't. Oh, it's online now? Oh, good. Thank you, because it wasn't yesterday. Now, Fabiana. Hi, Fabiana. My students right now are new to everything. They hadn't even seen Pinterest, and that's what we have them use, and they love Pinterest. So they also learn the art of interviews, of interviewing people, and you can have them determine who they interview to get a story. The great thing is you want them to do as much outside the class because you want them. A lot of people talk about not having homework. I think certain homework that there's certain homework that's not motivating or engaging, but this isn't really. This is them speaking with their family, getting stories from their family, and when I have them quote. They need to get quotes for their stories, and they need to ask questions. So I think it's great, and I don't call it homework anyway. We call it mission. So their mission is to go out to get this story, and they have to ask the people that they love, their parents. They can ask friends. They can ask, or maybe people in the community. It forces them to go out and learn about the people in their community. So I think that's what it is. That's good. Oh, that's a great tip, Peggy. So it asks students to brainstorm people they can ask. You don't have to necessarily give them suggestions. A lot of them will know already. Or if you have a personal learning network, that's one of the best things because you'll always find someone you can ask. And if your students are connected to social media, then you can get them to ask famous people. So, for example, if one of them is doing a story on, let's say that the X Games, they can actually tweet that person. And if you're in a country like Argentina, Croatia, anything like that, any country, and it's basically not the U.S., a lot of times they love kids. They love having people. They'll do a Twitter chat and do the interview that way. I've had really famous people that I've just emailed, and they've actually come and they've answered my questions, and I was really surprised. So with social media, you can definitely have your students even ask famous people, and they'll do it. They can ask the president's secretary. Arnie Duncan, the Secretary of Education, has done Twitter chats. So there's a lot of ways that people go and they're willing to do it with social media because it's fast and quick, and they get good publicity. Storycorps.org is a great site. It gives you interview questions. It gives you examples of different interviews. And it's people that go in and they interview people around them, and then they can record this around the world. There are more newspaper apps in general. You can, if they're doing, you can even have them posted as a Go Animate. But these are some of my favorites. Touchcast, Talking Ben and Tom, you can do this on your mobile device. You can have it on either iOS or Android. They can do it as buddy books. So if you're doing it with kids and you can't show, then that's a good one. The other one that I think is really good is Telegami. Telegami, and I actually think Telegami and Talking Ben News are the best ones, pretty much, for these kind of news segments. So if you're doing it video segments, you can think outside the box. It doesn't have to look like a typical newscast. If you have real little kids, I've seen 6-year-olds do that. So this is the book that I was telling you about. I'm just letting you know it has 2 lesson ideas. It has the scripts. All of these are editable, by the way. In other words, you can edit them. You can print them out, or the students can do them online on the computer. They're also Google Docs. It also has a rubric, and that's how I grade all of this. I use rubrics. And so you can find all of this in the Pearl Trees, which is under blogging, because this is something that I think should be ongoing, but of course, you can decide to do it once, twice a year, depending on what the situation is. Or you can do this as, like I said, a curriculum framework. So there you go. If you have any questions, I think we're pretty much close to the 30-minute. But you can always find these if you go to ShellyTerrell.com webinars. You'll find them, and you can always go to thepearltrees.com, Shelly Terrell, and you'll find everything there as well. So thank you, and have a happy, happy Halloween. You get this.